Hey guys, welcome back to the Energy to Heal podcast. My name's Laura. I'm your host today. I'm an RN and a master's level Splankna practitioner, and today we are talking about so many topics. We're in the middle of a series where I'm interviewing all of my 10 preferred practitioners that are on my website at lauramilliken.com. These are all virtually trained practitioners, so they can meet with you no matter where you live in the entire world, and this is your chance to get to know them a little bit. But before we get into that, this has been a story I wanted to share with you guys that I don't even know if I'm going to be able to put it into words, but it was a very unique experience for me as I've been in the past few years studying like the subconscious. What is it? There was a large chunk of my life I didn't even know humans had a subconscious. I heard people reference it once in a while, but I didn't know anything about it. And in Splankna, as you know, we're not dealing with the conscious mind, the part of your mind that remembers what you had for breakfast yesterday or who your friends are, but the subconscious, the part of you that is like a computer. It absorbs and remembers everything you've ever been through, including when you were in the womb, including when you were a baby. It remembers every emotion you felt, but it runs in the background. You can't just grab files from it whenever you want to. But the crazy thing is it dictates and runs this like autopilot program in your nervous system that most of the time you aren't even aware of. Most of the time. So my story is I went on a plane ride recently, and this was a tiny, tiny little plane. It had 3 seats across, and we hit some bad weather and some turbulence, and I don't know what it is, but the older I get, the scarier flights have gotten for me. They used to never bother me at all, but I'm sitting on this tiny little airplane, and it feels like we are puddle jumping, like the big dips in the sky and your stomach jumps up to your throat. And I very, very purposefully decided to get very quiet and not tense up. I consciously forced myself to relax around what was happening and just close my eyes and imagine myself sitting with the Lord, because I could feel my heart pounding. I could feel my muscles wanting to grab the chair arms around me. I felt my body wanting to panic. And I'm not a panicky person. I'm a very, it'll be fine, typically type of person. I don't tend towards anxiety very easily. But in this moment, I was like, I'm going to relax every muscle and I'm going to sit with Jesus and I am going to embrace whatever this flight has for me. And in that scenario, whatever happened in that moment created the most unique experience that I have had in a very long time. Instead of just being in my thoughts, being in my body's experience of panic, I just observed all of it. I just kind of like tuned in to listen to the conversation that was happening in my head. And this is where I begin to sound crazy. I just noticed the thoughts flying through my mind. Instead of thinking them, I observed myself thinking them. And I could almost, so I tell you the subconscious runs in the background. We're almost never aware of it. But in this airplane ride, I was aware of my conscious mind and my subconscious mind having 2 completely different experiences. And what do I mean by that? Oftentimes I'll tell my Splankna clients, the way that your conscious mind processed that trauma or that event was probably different than the way your subconscious processed the exact same event, because your subconscious is typically more fear-based, more childlike, more dramatic, less likely to give itself to reason. And so I have this almost 40-year-old mind that knows this is what small planes do. Statistically speaking, we are going to be just fine. Yep, this is scary, but we're not actually in real danger. And the other part of my mind that was like, we're all going to die. We are all going to die today. And I didn't even tell my oldest kid goodbye because he was already at school and he's never going to have a mother again. And literally these 2 parts of me were going back and forth, and I could I know this sounds so wild, but I was almost listening to my conscious mind try to comfort my subconscious mind. And the rational side of me would kick in, and then the fear-based side of me would kick in. And I would be like, okay, Jesus, I'm giving you all of these fears, all of this. I knew it was irrational, but my brain is instantly going to like, and this is terrible, but like a pile of crushed up plain matter in a field somewhere. 'Cause like, I'm like, well, that's obviously where we're headed. And I don't know any other time in my recent life that I have ever literally listened to those two parts of me try to process the scary situation that I was in. Anyway, just something so, so interesting. I've thought about it so many times. It's kind of painted the way that I've seen sessions since then, because you realize you really are dealing with a different part of you that isn't as connected to logic. And it runs programs and it agrees to things and it tries desperately to keep you alive and safe and to sense every threat out in the world, even when your conscious mind knows you're probably going to be just fine. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you because I thought it was interesting. Just a reminder, anything you could ever want to know about this podcast, it's going to be at lauramilliken.com, MILLIKEN. Promo codes for if you want to go get trained and get a discount. All these practitioners and their contact information is on there. What is Splankna? A little bit more about me and what I do. It's all on the website. I'd love you to go check it out. Today I'm interviewing Joanna KORBER, and she is a certified clinical social worker and a master's certified Splankna practitioner. She also has trainings and certifications in so many other things, which she'll get into a little bit in this interview. But she is really passionate about helping people get to the root of what's really going on so that they can experience true healing and wholeness. She's the creator of the Wholeness Path, which is a practical journey towards living from the inside out. This woman is near and dear to my heart. I enjoyed our conversation so much, and I think it was the fastest one. Like, I was like, wait, I feel like we were just doing introductions and our whole hour is up. It went by so fast. I hope you enjoy it. There are so many different topics we cover here, including non-epileptic seizures and how those relate to Splankna, people who are just gifted from the Lord at just seeing in the spirit. And what do we do with that? She touches on gender, identity confusion from a Splankna lens, her own healing journey. It's all in this episode. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Here's my conversation with Joanna. One of the reasons I'm so excited to get into this conversation with you is because at Advanced, we sat by each other and we did a session on each other as a practice. Okay. So you were a different person then. I mean, even just like looking at you, you physically don't look like the same person from when I met you a few years ago.
Wow.
Like, I mean, you were just in the middle of a lot of your own just deep healing journey. And it never ceases to amaze me how when people go through emotional healing, how their body changes, their face changes, their eyes change. Like you look 10 years younger. Like, not that you looked old or anything before, but I remember, since then at Masters, we've kind of sat on different sides of the room and haven't had a ton of time to interact. But I just remember being like, whoa, I can see the healing that the Lord has walked you through just on you.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing to even hear. Thank you.
Yeah. My favorite question to ask people is just, how did you hear about Splankna? What was your introduction to it? And what was the point where you were like, okay, I think this actually is awesome. It's working.
Yeah, especially we have to address like the elephant in the room, the word Splankna. No one knows what that is, and they usually ask me, is it splunking, like caving? And I was like, nope.
Yeah, I'm not a caver. Nope.
No, and I think it's actually fun, and I really believe God is fun, Jesus is fun, Holy Spirit is fun, and it just strikes up conversation. But I had just had my second little boy, Zion, And he was really struggling actually with letting his dad hold him. And I just knew instinctively, I'm a counselor by trade, just in my heart and in my spirit and my soul. I was like, ooh, something's going on here. It's creating a like a rejection feeling in my then husband at the time. And I could see the dynamic was not good. And I asked my bestie next door when I was walking dogs with her, like we always did, you know, what do you think? What could I do? And she said, you need to do Splankna with my mom. And I first, my question was, Splunk what? Like, what is that? And she said, I don't know how to explain it, which is really cute because she grew up doing it with her mom. And she's like, you just need to try it. It's really powerful and it's going to help. And I thought, help how? He's like 2 months old.
Right.
And I was at that point postpartum. I wasn't struggling with the depression, but I was still the fixer in the family. So I was like, well, I've got to fix this. And I wanted them to have a strong bond. And so I did it. And I literally was holding my 1.5, 2 month old with my arm out, which I'd never done kinesiology at that point, with the neighbor, essentially grandmother, and in our house. And she was reading our mail with my arm. And I just had no context for that. Gently, kindly, she prayed before the session. It was just such a Holy Spirit moment. My husband was next to me, and he had voluntarily, signed up to do this with us. None of us knowing what to do or what we were going to get into. And she was just coming up with these emotions that my eyes were getting bigger. I knew those were present, and his eyes were getting better
You knew they
because
were
he knew
present in your 2-month-old?
in the atmosphere. So what had
Oh,
happened
okay.
was the 2 month old was taking up an offense and defending me and blocking relationship with his dad. And
Yeah.
I thought, they can do that?
I
First
was
of
going to
all,
say, for someone listening that's not very familiar with Splankna, they're going to be like, how can a 2-month-old take up offense?
yes, yes, I was in that same boat.
Yeah.
But she was right on with everything that was coming up. And
Wow.
because he was sensing, and he's 10, he's turning 10 this week. He's still that sensitive little boy. He senses
Mm,
atmosphere. He senses people's emotions. He can read people's emotions in a sense before he even talks to them. So that
mm,
tracks now. So
wow.
we did the tapping and on his behalf and forgave places that needed to be forgiven. And I forgave and he forgave me. And things like he's 2 months old and forgiving his mom and emotions. Maybe I think we even had a top of the head. I should have looked back and just see. He was carrying emotion for me. Um, and this is what was profound to me the most because you don't know if it works. How do we know if it works? Well, this
Yeah.
was a pretty strong litmus test. The next morning we went to church and we're typically in the cry room because I nurse and we hold him the whole time. Well, I hold him the whole time. I handed him off to dad and he didn't cry once. And from that day forward, he didn't cry, with dad again. In
Wow.
fact, dad had a procedure done and needed to rest for a little while and would hang out and hold him on the back porch for hours.
Wow. And before that, instant screaming if you handed him to dad. Oh my
Instant.
gosh. That's
And
a
not
new
to
one.
other
I
and
haven't
not
heard
to other
a story
people.
about
So
like people bringing their baby because they won't let one parent hold them. I just love all the different places that Splankna shows up as a helpful tool.
yeah. And it was really a kind of like a gateway into bonding for them, which was beautiful because that needed to happen. And without how should I say, denaturing or changing the essence of who Zion was, because God did that. God knew it needed to happen, but Zion still was protected and guarded in how he was uniquely created at the same time,
Mm,
which
yeah.
is beautiful.
So you kind of got an advantage because your first Splankna session was a family you knew and trusted really well. You weren't kind
Yes.
of coming in blindly, and instantly it was resonating with you, and you're like, I just know this is right on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what was your background before that? Like, were you a believer for a long time? Were you working in any kind of similar fields, or was all of this brand new to you?
It was not brand new. In fact, I'm a dabbler and I have a master's in clinical social work. So I've kind of been counseling since 13. I was a peer counselor. This is my niche and I love it. And I've gone through theophostic training and sozo and several different other healing modalities just for my own self, for my own life, but also with interest to expand the healing. Because I knew I've been a strong believer, got saved when I was 4, but didn't see a lot of change. And some of the things that I was either receiving myself or working in those environments. And I just knew God's promise that I am a healer, that I redeem what was lost. And I forgive generations, I heal generations, and blessings are coming down generations. I was like, we're not seeing that.
Yeah, you heard God say
So,
that, but you were
right.
like, excuse me, there's a lot going on down here.
Yes. And
Okay.
my intention in my heart was to be in that flow of healing and to share it with others. And I
Yeah.
just kept seeing walls and blocks and I was also a body work specialist, so I've been a corrective exercise personal trainer where I deal with people in a lot of pain and try to
Mm.
help heal the pain. And I would get to basically walls where we would do physically everything we knew to do, which should work,
Yeah.
and they weren't healing. And I thought, there's more to this then. There's something else I'm missing. And I started praying about that as well. Okay, God, help me bridge the gap. Where are we holding pain in our body that has little to do with maybe twisting our ankle and more to deal with emotional and, trauma rooted experiences?
And you just knew that intuitively that there could be an emotional root to this?
I think that's just how I'm wired. Like Zion, he's wired a bit like me. We just
Yeah.
kind of know something else is on the horizon.
I think sometimes I wonder if like my nursing training really swung me in the other direction because
Uh,
even I've been doing this for 4 years. Even when someone physically progresses in a physical, like their body gets better because of Splankna work, it still floors me, shocks me. I'm like, there's just something so fixed in my brain that I'm like, well, no, it's just a twisted ankle. Like, there's no
right.
emotions in your ankle. And I know there are. And like, part of me gets it. And the other part is like, how in the world could fear and resentment or whatever emotion it is keep your ankle from healing? And it's
Yeah.
just so cool. I'll never ever get sick of those stories.
No, me neither. And I was a bit compartmentalized because I was trained more Western medical to think that way. So when
Okay.
I was trained corrective exercise, it was all physiology, all twisted ankles and, you know, you know, consistent, dynamic movement patterns or sedentary movement patterns or whatever. So I was thinking in that vein, but as I was with people, because I think the way God made me, I would begin to go, same with Zion crying with his dad. I thought some people would just say, well, his dad doesn't know how to hold him, or he doesn't, how some people are clumsy with babies.
Or some, he's
But
just a mama's boy.
he's just
Yeah.
a mama's boy. We'd have like pretty logical explanations for that. And I think this is where we trust God because there's some giftings and there's intuition inside of us that he puts there, and it's usually unique to how he crafted us for the body, for other people, so that we could go, you know what, maybe there's more to this, and it's just how we're built. And so I started leaning into that instead of just compartmentalizing what I was taught, leaning into more of who I am. I'm in this profession because this is who I am. Let me allow God to move through that, even though it's a secular minded profession. How can I bring in the whole of me?
Yeah.
That helped.
So when you meet with clients now, how much of the like sozo and the movements, like you have so many different hats that you wear, counselor hat and now Splankna hat. Do you
Yeah.
kind of mix it all together? Do you primarily do Splankna? What does that look like?
I do mix it.
You do.
It was
Okay.
unintentional in the beginning. I would be with a corrective exercise client and we'd be stuck and I'd say, "Hey, I'm just going to float something out there." And I just would suggest, "Here's where I've learned what kind of happens in the body sometimes." And they would flip-flop sometimes between PT client and Splankna client. And then I began to allow some of that to weave into Splankna sessions. And I've done soul work and weekends where some things need to be expressed physically. So I'll have a client get up and do a couple of different stretches and just release some tension out of their body because I can
Yeah,
feel
I love
that's
that.
necessary. And I have a dual studio here, so I get to do both and inside my space, which is amazing.
And where do you meet people? Where do you live?
I live in Firestone, Colorado, and I meet in my home. I have an office in my basement, which is a beautiful. I'm sitting in the Splankna office space, and behind this magic curtain is my corrective exercise studio space. So it's
That's
very
so cool.
fun.
Okay, I'm getting off track with your story. I was just so
That's
curious
okay.
about your practitioner side of it. But okay, so yeah, so you did this with your son. You were like, okay, what is this Splankna thing? It's awesome. Where'd you go from there?
We would continue to, when we meet just difficult seasons, which I met quite a few as part of my story in the marriage I was in. I'm now divorced 2 years, 2.5 years. And I was just consistently trying to find something that would help. And that looked like, Christian counselors and psychiatrists, psychologists. And I would go back to Splankna because it was my neighbor's mom. I was still kind of feeling like, is this what we actually need? Because the other modalities for us weren't creating a lot of shift or change or healing. And I needed it myself. And so I would start with myself. And the sessions we would get things generations back that tracked so strongly. And I remember one in particular, if I could share this story, I continued to get laryngitis every year. And I'm a fitness instructor with a group of people with an elderly group in an aqua class. And I've taught that class for 13 years. I love them. They're all aunties and uncles for me. And they would even joke, oh, there goes your voice this year again. And I never thought anything of it because it was just, the winter season.
Yeah.
And I just allowed myself to be sick and have laryngitis 5 years running. And we got to that spot in Splankna where it was in the thyroid and it was voicelessness. It was a stronghold on my mother's line of not speaking up and not speaking the truth, mainly in who we are, where our heart is, and how we feel. And I know that about my mom, and I knew that about my grandmom. And it was really powerful to me to see that this was an intentional oppression on me speaking up throughout my bloodline. And we
Wow.
healed that. And I have not gotten laryngitis since.
Oh my word.
Yes.
Wow. And I mean, in your own life, I'm sure there were lots of areas where you weren't speaking up, just kind of
Yes.
stuffing it, put the next foot in front of the other, keep moving.
Yep. Just be strong and say what people want you to say.
Did you also get breakthrough in being able to kind of speak up for yourself, or was it just the thing you noticed the most was your laryngitis?
Small increments. First came anger, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
First came permissioning anger.
Wow.
And because anger wasn't a safe emotion for me, and I didn't have context for that until it was explained, and I began to unravel why it would not be safe and what we do with kind of permissible emotions versus emotions that, whether experientially or personality wise, don't feel is safe for us to experience.
Yeah.
So the anger came first, and that needed to be healed. Kind of came out sideways, and that's part of my, like, the sorrow in my story is some of my anger came out sideways at my little ones. And I had prayed and wanted kids my whole life. I was 38 when I got married, had my first baby at 39, and my next at 41. So I was an older mom and loved children since I was little. It was like the Pied Piper everywhere I go. I'd be around kids. So for me to have to work through that piece was one of the hardest things I've ever had to work through.
Why was it so hard? Because you were admitting there was anger, whereas before you were just shoving it?
Yes, and the person I showed up as was someone I didn't recognize. I and my friends would say, "Oh, she's very happy, she's very loving, she's outgoing." And unfortunately, for a season, my kids did see another side of me that to this day I was very sad about. I was very
Mm.
sad that that's how I showed up. It was intermittent. It was when I would be so overwhelmed and feeling like nobody sees me and I just need control somewhere. And
Yeah.
they were the easiest, most likely people to control in my life.
Yeah.
And I tried to control them. And some of it was with anger, some of it was with, frustration and intolerance. And I had studied and had all the tools that I thought I needed in my tool belt as a mom. I was
Mm-hmm.
counseling families before I was even married and had children. So I had assumed my knowledge, my training would help me in that area. Well, and now I know, when pain rises, when trauma rises, it takes logic offline.
Yeah.
It does.
That's a great way to say that.
And it broke my heart. And I was like, I need help.
Mm-hmm.
I need healing. This is a sign. This is not who I was made to be, and it's not who I want to be.
Yeah.
It's helped me in my, I will say, sometimes it's very appropriate, in my opinion, to share things about ourselves that help a client feel normalized a bit. And I just shared some of that last week with a client because they were showing up in a way that they didn't believe that they could show up that way, and it was hurting other people. And I just was able to say, you know what? I may be sitting on this side of the chair, but I've done that. I've been there. And it's very painful to look in the mirror and to admit that you're doing something that you would have pointed a finger at somebody else for doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you to know you're not alone and you don't have to stay there. I'm living testimony of that. It was really helpful at the moment.
Do you remember the core of that anger? Did it go back to childhood wounds? Was it current stuff in your life that you were experiencing? Was it all of it?
That's such a great question. And I think this is really helpful for even people considering Splankna. It was current in my marriage because I was being controlled and I felt trapped. But as I began to dig, it started in childhood. So what was happening was the marriage and the dynamics that were happening and the way we related to each other and we danced with each other was a abuser, controller, victim. So that dance had been triggered again. And so the things from childhood were beginning to rise. I was acting like a child in some ways. I was losing my faculty. I felt like I was people would consider me a strong woman. That was what I was told most of my life. You're so strong. I was deflated. I would show up with my friends or family that knew me for years and they said, we don't recognize you. You're a different person. And that's when I realized I needed more help, I was changing. And when I started digging, some of that began with my dynamic with my own dad.
Okay.
And once I was able to see that.
Once you saw it, you probably really saw it, huh? Like
I really saw it.
So many things make sense.
Yep. Because you could put the experiences in childhood next to the experiences that were current, and they were coinciding very closely.
Yeah. I heard someone say once that we tend to marry our unfinished business. And another way that you could say that is like what feels familiar to us, what feels like home is what we will end up marrying, because even if it was horrible or scary or abusive, something in us says, I know this world. I know my role with this type of a scary person. Yeah. I know what I'm supposed to do. Everything else, it might be better, but it might be worse. So I'm just going to stick to what I know. And we replay the events of our childhood into our marriage. And the unfinished business piece of it is like maybe something in us subconsciously wants a do-over. So I never maybe got there with my dad. He was out, maybe your story is he was always abusive. We never healed that relationship. I never became the apple of his eye like I deeply wanted to as a child. So I'm going to, and this is all subconscious, marry someone similar to him so I can have a do-over. But this time I'm going to win him over. This time it's going to be different. This time he's going to swoon when I walk into the room and be the apple of his eye. And something in me will get to complete a cycle and it will feel so good.
Yeah.
But then that's not usually what happens. Is we just live another grown-up version of abuse or whatever it was that happened in our childhood.
Yeah, and I see that a lot. And I did read a pastor, and unfortunately I'm blanking on his name. He wrote the book, Getting the Love You Want. And then I think he wrote another book, Keeping the Love You Want. And his perspective was very similar, but also there was a redemptive piece in it. And I kind of tossed this around with God and said, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm leaning more towards that direction of it's everything I believe you just said. And because we see resistance, we see when we try to, help walk someone into a healing moment in the body, soul, or spirit, there's a resistance there because of homeostasis. It's familiar. It's grounded. We understand this. Even if it's bad, it's familiar. But then this pastor had this incredible, just other take on it, that it's also an option for redemption. It's almost, in his perspective, God allowing, not that God, I think, would put those people together, but if that is our propensity, both people have the freedom to choose healing. And what would rise in that would be friction, that's going to rise. The friction is already there. But there's also a redemptive opportunity if both parties are willing to heal those wounds and actually kind of untether from the past and begin to be the more fullest or fuller expression of who you are, because you're still carrying those wounds. And that dance, if you will, that marriage partnership just basically allows those to float up in that covenant. It seems like people say this all the time. Well, when we were dating, none of this came up. But when we got married, once the covenant piece hit, some of this stuff began to really float up. And that's not surprising to me, because we have an enemy who hates covenant. And he's fine kicking back and keeping, everything under wraps until opportune time, is what we're told. And when that usually hits is not the opportune time for us. I'm sure there's more stressors that are also going on. But I do see it, and I'm working with a couple right now in a very similar situation. And I've shared this with them. I believe it's opportunity, because our God is very personal, and he loves us, and we're his kids. So he doesn't want us to carry trauma and wounds that are keeping us restricted from childhood, that we don't even kind of know that are there. This is an opportunity for both parties to go, I need to heal that so I can be a more whole version for God first, with that intimacy relationship, but for the person I'm walking with most closely on this earth. So
this episode is brought to you by Our Ritual. And honestly, I love what they're doing, because it makes real relationship support actually doable in the middle of real life. Splankna is amazing for resetting those deep subconscious patterns that you have. But Our Ritual is a relationship support platform. It combines licensed therapy sessions with practical tools and guided exercises that you can use between sessions. So it's not just talking about your problems, it's actually learning how to communicate better, work through conflict, and reconnect. It's 100% virtual, which means no driving anywhere. And they have flexible scheduling, even nights and weekends. So if you're anything like me with kids and full schedules, that matters. They also offer individual plans, so you don't have to wait until your spouse is ready. You can start growing and strengthening yourself right now. If you want to check it out, I have a link for you in the show notes. When you go through that link, you can use code ENERGY20 for 20% off your first month. Again, just click the link in the show notes and use code ENERGY20 for 20% off. Yeah, I love that you said that. I just had an interview with Tiffany Sturms not too long ago, and she said the same thing, and that was the first time I had ever heard anyone else say it, but it's something my husband and I talk about a lot, is what people call triggers. Mm-hmm. My husband and we refer to it as the devil can't help but play his hand.
Yeah.
And so when you're triggered, it's literally just a spotlight for the next area that God wants to set you free in, or he's showing you hey, you see that way you reacted there? That's not normal. There's some stuff behind there, and I want you to heal it, because I'm inviting you to new levels of peace and freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
If instead you get triggered and you try to shove it down and pull yourself together and move on again, you're just reburying the thing that God is trying to get your attention about.
Yeah.
I think that's such a beautiful way.
Yeah, from a loving dad. Exactly. And my perspective has morphed for sure over time, because I read a lot and I ingest a lot of material, and started out in the clinical psychology realm, and thought of it this way, as pathology and dysfunction. And the more I have conversation with God, and I do that a lot in sessions, I really love doing what I'm doing. I love it. Mm-hmm. I really get to partner with the Holy Spirit in ways that are unique, that I wasn't before until Splankna came along. and we invite him to lead, and he does.
Yeah.
And he's talking all the time to me and the person in front of me or
Yeah.
people in front of me. And when he gives me just a different angle on something,
Yeah.
a different way to perceive what I'm looking at, and it's so redemptive every time. It's so healing. His love, there's no bounds. There really is no bounds. No matter what I hear, no matter what someone has gone through, and some of it's incredibly traumatic. And I would judge it a certain way of this is how it must be healed. And he said, well, who told you that?
Mm-hmm.
Did I tell you that? And I was like, no, you did
I feel
not.
like doing Splankna has taught me that God is a perpetual optimist. He's just like you're sitting listening to the worst story ever, and the sense I get from the Holy Spirit is like, I'm not worried about it. I can heal that. Like I can walk with them through that. Like he is a glass half full, glass overflowing guy every time.
Yep. Every time, every time. And I see things I didn't see because I ask him to see with his eyes. And I think that's the beauty part. I get to, um, whew, I prayed this prayer. And I'm going to cry. I'm a crier. When I was a little kid, I prayed this prayer. Let me hear what you hear. Let me see what you see. And let me have a heart that beats like yours. And I remember starting to pray that when I was little. Um, and I still pray that prayer. And I feel like he honors it. He honors it.
It's
He'll
a very
say,
mature prayer for a little girl.
it is. I was a little interesting child. Like I was taking care of kids at 6, 7 years old. And I was like, every day after school by 8 years old, I had, a 10-month-old I was caring for. So I really loved children, really loved to be with kids. And I felt their pain. I remember like feeling their pain early. And so that was my heart. I don't want little kids to feel pain. And I was a little kid, and really that was projection. I'm
Yeah.
feeling pain. No one's noticing my pain. How do I help them not feel the pain I'm feeling? And
Oh,
so realizing that's a lot where that came from. But the gifting in the heart was from God. And that's where we need to be careful because I think those of us who are more geared towards counseling and some of it's called burden carrying,
yeah.
we can tend to over carry and then we get buried in that. And that for a season was my story as well. God
Yeah.
had to really help me with that.
Yeah, can you talk about that? Because I feel like I am currently having to be very aware of how much I carry. And I know I'm not the healer. I know it's God doing it. I know I'm not responsible for people's lives. Like consciously, I know all that. But like I go through these seasons where all of it can start to feel heavy. And not that it's not even the hearing people's stories side of it. It's like I go out in public and I just can, it's like I can feel everybody's. I know that sounds so weird,
No,
but it's
not at
like
all.
I notice their face expression. I notice their body language. And I'm like, that person is not okay. Like, does anybody like I don't know what to do when I feel like I'm just this like sponge walking around in the world and like I care about everybody. Like
Yep.
even when I don't need to be, they don't want me to be, like I'm like, man, how do I turn that down a little bit? I don't know. And then
It's
I go
so
through seasons
good.
where it's not so intense. But what do you, I'm asking you because it sounds like you can relate.
I can relate, and it's such a good question. I have a women's group that meets here, and there's usually 12 to 14 of us, and that question comes up all the time. And it's not just about people in public, but there are like half the women that will express exactly what you just expressed, including myself. I can feel public people. It's burden carrying in the home too, like over carrying for the
Yeah.
spouse or the kids or, extended family, especially relational stuff where we're trying to carry and help manage. Um, I really believe there's a deep gifting in that's what's a wiring that God's allowed. I think culture will call it empath. I believe it's also leans into the prophetic, which is just we kind of sense things and know things. And prophetic can be hearing and feeling and sensing and smelling. It's all of us. It's not just I know something about the future. That's just a little like a microcosm in the whole expanse, I think, of prophetic people. But I believe it's that expansive place inside of us where we are noticing and sensing not only the physical world, but the spiritual world too. We can sense the things that are going on spiritually around us. And it's always happening. We just don't have eyes to see it most of the time. Some people do. And what's been amazing is my story has morphed a lot in that, because I was, and I still am, wired that way. And as a child, I was dreaming what was happening in our family prolifically, some prophetically. And there's a whole storyline on that. And more people are coming to me for Splankna who are very similar. And they just didn't have a space to talk about that. What do I do when I feel the weight of all of this? I carried it, and it created a very limiting physical issue for me, where it was like a seizure disorder. And I worked in a group home, and there was 40 women, 40 girls, 13 to 29, so a huge demographic range. And I was the house mama, and they would come to me, and I would listen, and I would carry, and I would dream their traumas, and I would dream things that were spiritually happening to them every night. And I was getting, seizure-like reactions. And I carried that condition for 27 years.
You had seizures for 27 years?
And the mystery was they weren't seizures. We could not find out what they were.
Were they non-epileptic seizures?
Non-epileptic seizures.
Oh my gosh, this has been my whole conversation the last 2 weeks is non-epileptic seizures, because
Really?
I just had this client come down from South Dakota because she had heard on the podcast that I had worked with a family member kind of as an emergency Splankna session over Zoom. I don't typically do Zoom sessions, but my grandma was in the hospital having 8 seizures a day.
Wow.
And I was like, let's just try it and see, because they were saying the same thing. It's not a true seizure. It's not registering. We can't give you seizure meds. Good luck. Go get therapy, they said.
Yes.
So we did a Splankna session, and she had one more seizure after this session and then never again since. And so I just briefly told that story on the podcast, and then I had someone email me and say, hey, we heard this story on your podcast. I have a child who is going through the same thing. They were hospitalized a lot of January, but they said there's nothing they can do to help us. So they drove down to Omaha, and they did a 3-hour Splankna intensive. And I just talked to her 3 days ago. And I said, when I first did it with her, I said, hey, how are you going to know? Like, at what point are you going to know, like, this helped me, this worked? And she goes, man, if I could go 2 weeks without a seizure, I will know that this worked. Well, a couple days ago was 4 weeks with no seizures. Isn't that incredible?
It is incredible.
Especially
it's incredible.
When the doctors say there's nothing we can do. You're on your own. Good luck.
Yes.
I love that God's like, I got you.
I got you. I got you.
That is so fun for me. I could do that all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just worked through emotional stuff. And it really is a testimony to how powerful emotions are. That if you have some turmoil going on, it can literally shut your entire body down, make you convulse or pass. Like, what? Yeah. Just from emotions. And people say like, oh, I don't deal with emotions. I don't do emotions. And you're like, well, you don't really have a choice.
Well, they're going to deal with you whether you decide you're intending on it or not.
Yeah, you let them out or they'll let you out. One of the way.
Either way. For sure.
Oh
I'm glad you said that.
I'm so glad you shared that part of your story. It's just blowing my mind right now that even seizure activity, non-epileptic seizures could be affected by it.
Yeah.
So sorry to go off on a tangent, but are you saying
you're good.
Are you saying that was largely because of the emotional weight you were carrying from these sweet women at this group home?
Yeah. And I believe it was the culmination, like the emotional weight that kept accumulating from childhood, because I carried my dad. That was an emotional incest situation, and probably most likely more than just emotional. And it had just piled on. I was just continuously taking that caregiver role since I was a very little girl in every sphere I was in, not realizing that. And, they called me the house mama. Everybody was in my office all the time, even the therapist, because I wasn't at that point one of the hired on therapists. I was on the board, and they were like, you can't keep like counseling the girls that were their counselor. I said, well, they're coming and they're crying and they need a hug or they want a mama. And I would do that. And I thought there was nothing wrong with that. Well, some of that was just my carrying wounding. If I would love, then they'll be better. If I could care, I'll take care of them.
Yeah.
I'll offset their pain. And I didn't realize I was taking it on. Mm-hmm. And it was not just physiology, emotional, it was spiritual. And what was happening to me was attacks spiritually, both in the physical, but also in the spirit realm. And I would palsy and twitch and shake. And I had lost count at 22 doctors and ER visits like crazy because it's very scary. I'd lose my arms and my legs. I'd not officially pass out, but I wouldn't be able to walk. So it looks very dramatic. And I was on a weekend, a healing weekend for myself. It was called Soul Work, and it started to happen. And this was 20 some odd years later. And I said, okay, Lord, not now. Please don't let this ruin my opportunity to be healed. This is my turn. And it stopped. We dealt with a memory on that carpet, which is what it was. It was a moment of healing, played out, enacted in a physical way. And my symptoms stopped after that. Completely stopped after that.
Wow.
And I was having sometimes 2 to 5 a month. And I have since discussed that with him. And I said, I went through a lot of work to try to get rid of those. And they disappeared when I prayed and asked. And he had given me a little bit before my carpet work, my moment on the floor. We had an hour to be with Jesus, and he showed me a picture of something traumatic, and he said, we're going to deal with this today. Gave me a little foreshadow, kind of like a good dad, just held me and prepped me and said, we're going to handle this. And I'd never seen that picture before in my mind, and I didn't know what
memory surfaced for you. Oh my word.
Yep. And it meant something. It meant that there was more than emotional incest. So I knew what it was, but I didn't have any memory and story behind it. But he stopped it there. This is the other piece I want to share. We didn't go into lots of data and lots of memory. The body didn't pull up a lot of trauma. It was a flash that told me something was there, daughter. You're not crazy. And on the carpet, I invited Jesus into that moment, and he came in and was there with me, and he took so much of what I would have had to remember. And this is my experience. It doesn't always work like this.
Yeah.
And I've not had any memories or body memories or flashbacks since. It was a very systemic healing that he chose to do that day. Some of my operating systems had to be changed and worked on. More Splankna happened. But what was tied to that physical response was a trauma for me. That seizure-like response, it was tied to a hidden and repressed trauma or series of traumas. And Jesus took it. He just took it.
And how gracious and gentle that he gave you enough to kind of prepare you. Like, hey, I need you to know we're doing some real deep work today, and it's going to be something you didn't know was there. But I'm giving you a little blip, and then I'm just going to carry the rest of it for you. And that's all you need to know. You don't have to be re-traumatized. You don't have to... That's the beauty of it. It's like you don't have to wrap your brain around every detail, every response, every emotion. When you do these inner healing times with the Lord, it's like, it just feels like he covers so much, and we're totally free to be like simple and not smart and not like, we don't have to intellectualize the healing, you know? We get to, I always tell my clients, I just want you to be totally in receiving mode, because especially, I mean, as adults and especially women, like we are in serve, we are in do, we are in perform mode all day long.
Yep.
So what a gift to be able to just be like, okay, Jesus, I'm just going to sit at your feet, and I'm just going to like be the little kid who doesn't know what's going on and just gets to have like you do the hard work for me.
Yeah.
What a relief.
And what a beautiful turning of the roles in my story. He was a protective parent, loving father in that moment. He was what I had needed.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm realizing is I was trained to get the data. And now it's not that these modalities are always wrong, but it's almost feeling like you're digging through a dumpster. You're pulling out the garbage. And it is, in my estimation, in some ways re-traumatizing.
Hmm.
And if there is an opportunity from a really loving father to say, well, that's not all of you. That was part of you. That's not all of you. And so I will go into that part and I will meet you there and I will give you in that moment what you needed. And then I believe oftentimes that releases the body, soul, spirit from holding and vibrating in a place of unfinished business
Yeah.
because he comes in and becomes what we needed in that moment, which could be an ideal parent or it could be, just a safe space. There's multiple things that we need in those moments, but he knows exactly what those are better than even we do.
Mm-hmm.
It frees us up. I really believe it frees us up, like you said, not to be the mastermind behind how we heal.
Yeah. So, what kind of clients do you typically work with? Do you have a typical or a theme of clients that tend to, you said empaths typically find their way to you. You
Yep.
also mentioned working with a couple. Do you work with a lot of couples? Is it all over?
It's been all over, which I love. I've my youngest client has been, a toddler all the way up to mid 70s. Couples, families. I have families that I work with. We don't all work together because that would be really difficult, four in a room. But mom, dad, son, it's a blended family too. So I like that a lot because I understand I'm trained as a clinical social worker, so we work in the macro perspective as well. Like we
Mm-hmm.
are not just an individual, there's school and marriage and, work. All these things impact us significantly. So I really like that as well. But there is a thread of a type of a client that I see. And I laugh because God's like, buckle up. And I was like, yes, great. It's the seers. It's the people that are experiencing a lot of supernatural where they may or may not have had any kind of context or discussion about it in church or in the spaces that they're in. They feel weird. They feel like they're outliers and they may see things, they may hear things, they may smell things in the supernatural realm. And I love it and I normalize it for them. And then they're like, wait, this isn't crazy. It's like, no, that's not crazy. That's happening. You just have a little bit more of an antenna than maybe somebody else. And the relief that they get to experience of I'm not weird. There's not anything broken or wrong with me. I
Mm-hmm.
just maybe hover a little bit between the two, you know, spirit realm and earthly realm. The word says we're seated in heavenly places now, currently, with Jesus. And we're also in this natural world. I don't know that any of us fully understands what that means.
Yeah.
I certainly don't. And God does. So when someone sits in front of me and they say something really unique, like, I actually can see things in my room
Mm.
and they can describe them, I no longer flinch. Okay,
Yeah.
let's see what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to feel normalized and to have some protection around some of that and begin to let go of maybe access points the enemy has had to them and see the generational line. I now believe in that more than I ever did. There's a lot going on through family lines, not just trauma or what we, defined as genetics, alcoholism or whatever passing down. There's spiritual stuff being handed down. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of blessings that are being missed. And I really like to focus on what God is offering, not just what we're clearing out.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
Like the redemptive piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's so much to your story that we didn't even get to on this podcast, but is there anything else you want to add in? Share about your story, share about your journey, your life that we didn't get to as we kind of wrap this up.
Yeah, I think so. I also have been more recently working with clients who have gender identity confusion and preferences. And I had my own belief system about it, where I felt comfortable, where I landed. And this process has helped me not loosen what I believe. But I asked God one day, how do you feel about me calling someone who's a male a female?
Yeah.
Because that's what they prefer. He said, I don't have any energy about it. He said, why don't you, major in the majors? And I really heard that phrase, major in the majors. I said, what do you mean? He's like, love them. Show them who I am. I love them. I made them. I know how I made them. Mm-hmm. I know who they are. I'm a big boy. I'm a big God. I'm not easily offended. Yeah. So why don't you love them where they are?
Yeah.
And invite them into the identity that I have for them. But you're not in control of when that transitions, when they begin to understand who they really are. That's not your control piece.
I agree.
So
and
love them where they are.
So much. Yes.
Very helpful. Very helpful
because
for me.
How in the world is someone going to be open to hearing what God has to say about them if you're like, I refuse to call it? Like, come on. It's just not helpful. It's not super loving. And there is something to be said about loving people where they are.
Where they are. Yeah.
Meet them right where they are. So I can't have expectations on somebody who's been a believer for 6 months. I can't have 10-year-long Jesus following expectations on them.
Yes. Yes. And identity is Jesus's business. It really is Jesus's business. And because we, as human beings, tend to want to put things on people, whether it be because we want them to be healed or it's just more comfortable for us. And we have to also admit some of it's about us. We're not comfortable with something we don't understand or is not normal for us to encounter. And I had to embrace that, where I was in a discomfort place or an uncomfortable place, and it was impacting what I believe is biblical foundational understanding. And I don't mock that. He said, yeah, but who told you that? Who told you that's how I work? Mm-hmm. Did you tell yourself that? And I said, I believe I did. I believe I told myself that. Yeah. He said, well, let's look at it from my perspective.
Yeah. And I know it comes from a good spot. You want to honor what God says is true and God's creation. Yeah. It comes from a good spot. But I also think like how this person, whoever they are, lives their life, if it really has nothing to do with me, and it kind of like, who am I to bring myself into personal offense over literally anything anyone else does, because that's between them and the Lord. Like, it is kind of weird to bring myself into it and be like, well, I have an opinion about your lifestyle. Like, no, I'm here to offer what I know to do with Splankna and to help you sit in front of the feet of Jesus. Everything else is none of my business. That's kind of how I approach it. Like, yeah, I'm not making it my job to change your identity confusion or whatever it is. Right.
Because we know that we can't change other things about people when they come to us for other things. Right. Like, say it was an OCD pattern and we're going to deal with it the way we know how to, which is through the love of Jesus to find out where that got off track, right? Yeah. We would do that for that. Mm-hmm. And we're not in control as to when that begins to shift or move for them or where even it's rooted. I just realized I'm treating this the same way. Do I believe that God wants them to know their true identity and how they were made? I do believe that. Do I have to put that out in their face every moment of our session? No, I don't, because Jesus is going to do that work for them. He loves them more than I even could, more than they love themselves. Yeah. And he'll do that work in the behind the scenes.
And I'm just so proud of people like that for just being brave enough to walk into a Splankna session. Yes. Knowing that they have that going on. I'm just like, dude, I'm just proud of you for being here.
100%.
It takes a lot to make the appointment, actually show up for the appointment, sit on the couch and be like, okay, let's do this. I'm 100%. Just like, kudos, major respect.
That's how I feel too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to wrap it up. Somehow an entire almost hour went by.
Oh my gosh, did it really?
My goodness, you blink.
That's awesome.
and it's over. But can you just briefly tell people how to get in contact with you? And I'm also going to have all of your contact information. It's already on my website, lauramilliken.com. It's going to be in the show notes. But can you just talk a little bit about how to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Joanna KORBER, she'll have my cell phone, my email. I also have a website. It is myholoswellness.com. I have a couple things to offer on that, creating an app and just different things that I've really felt led to do. So a brave new world for me. So yeah, you can find me there.
Very cool. And I just want to reiterate for you guys listening, even if this is your first episode, I am currently interviewing all the 10 women, right now they're all women, who are on my 10 preferred practitioners list. And these are women that I have sat with in person, had lunch with, been through trainings with, known for years, and wholeheartedly trust them as people I would recommend. So when you reach out, if you're here from TikTok or if you have heard these episodes and you are ready to get some work done, but you don't have anyone in your area, this is my solution for you. I want you to hear these women's voices. Yeah. I want you to hear their heart for Jesus. I want you to feel a little bit like you got to know them in these interviews, to shorten up the gap between I think I'm ready to call, I think I'm ready to start, because it can be intimidating to just call up a random stranger and be like, I guess I'm going to tell you all my traumas. Trust sure. that I'm going to hope that you love Jesus, right? So this is my pleasure to bring these women on the podcast, help you get to know them a little bit. Specifically this week, I've also been getting a lot of questions from people about training. So I need to catch up on that, but I'm guessing there are some core trainings coming up because I'm getting a lot more questions about that. So just a reminder, to be trained in Splankna, you don't have to be a licensed therapist. I came to training as a registered nurse. Everything you could ever need to know about these trainings, there's information about it, upcoming times and locations. You can also find out information. There's a link to that on my website as well. And if you put in the promo code podcast, you will get a discount on your core training.
That's great.
If you heard about all of this through the podcast, it's kind of incentive to encourage you to go get training if you feel like the Lord's leading you. So yeah, ask him if this is for you. I can tell you confidently that we need more practitioners. If I could duplicate myself and have more of me doing sessions all the time, that would be awesome. So this is also my heart to just say, if you have been listening to these episodes and you're like, man, I just feel like these are my people, listening to these interviews, I relate with these women, I know what it means to want to help people walk through hard seasons, and the Lord's pulling on your heart, just pray about it. Just ask him if that's something that he would have for you, and feel free to reach out to me with any questions. So thanks for being here, Joanna. Thanks for being on the podcast. And, we will see you guys next week with another practitioner interview.